Do you believe in mythical creatures? I know the answer's probably no. And that's fine. That makes sense, doesn't it? Because there's really no proof of the Mothman, Wendigo, Chupacabra, Skinwalkers, right? But what if I told you that there was a little small, obscure town in Alaska that has been absolutely besieged by cryptic activity? Allegedly. And this activity left people dead, and those who weren't dead were left with only one choice. And that was to flee, leaving this town completely abandoned. So could this quite literally be a ghost town? Could it be cryptids? Could it be haunted? I don't know, and that's why we're talking about it today. After all, Alaska is still very wild and many parts hostile to humans, which means it could also be the perfect climate for things we can only imagine. So while people have been living in nearby areas for hundreds, if not thousands of years, no one had tried to tame the wild region on the southern end of the Kenai Peninsula. People believed it to be a haunted spot, but it was also a very beautiful spot, with lots of space and tons of fish, so people braver than I gave it a good college try to settle the area. First appearing in the 1940 U.S. Census as an unincorporated, I've said this word so many times, unincorporated, there we go, village of only 31 people. It had humble beginnings and grew as it thrived off hunting and salmon canneries, as well as a host of gold miners that would take residence here whilst they prospected nearby mountains and rivers. But it wouldn't be long before things began to take a bad turn. Hey guys, remember me from the beginning of the video? I am random European that has no name, but was attacked by Sasquatch. Well, I'm gonna tell you how I'm gonna tell you how I got that Sasquatch away from me. I gave him Sour Boys, and now we're best friends, actually. And I'm gonna stop the accent. But as you guys know, I have my own co-owned candy company with my beautiful, beautiful boyfriend, Caleb. And it's candy we make ourselves right here in Texas. And it's delicious, mate. It's delicious. And we come out with new flavors every week. Do you know how many candy brands do that? None. Literally none. We're drowning, and we're not really making a lot, but we enjoy doing it. No, it's great. And you guys have been super supportive, and I'm super happy you guys like it. But these are currently the new flavors that are out at the moment. I don't know what's gonna be out right now by the time you guys get around, but this is my favorite flavor that we have ever put out so far. It's called Melon Island, and the packaging is adorable. But as you guys know, we have the strips. They are so good. They're sour licorice. I've almost eaten this whole bag. I didn't save it. I was supposed to do this with the new bag, but I couldn't. We also have blue raspberry little guys. These are basically just little sour gummies that we have. So good. Made with all natural flavoring, all natural ingredients. And you, my beautiful little sunflower, are gonna get a discount for sticking around for this long. But yeah, if you guys want some delicious candy, I'm gonna give you 15% off. I'm gonna make a code just for you, just for the people watching this video. I'm gonna make it in real time. All right, promo code. Let's do Sasquatch. All caps, Sasquatch. We're gonna do 15% off. All right, and this applies to the entire order, but we're gonna limit the number of times this can be used, so we're gonna only do it for the first 500 people. The first 500 people can get 15% off their order. So click the link down in the description or down in the pinned comment down below and get your Sour Boys today. Thank you for supporting Sour Boys. Let's get back to it. So let's talk about the strange things that began to happen. So people would be pretty much uneasy in this area, and the feelings of paranoia wouldn't be uncommon. Even as far back as 1905, canners would leave their jobs because something unidentifiable was bothering the camp. But they would return the next season because the canning was so good. And some of the hunters that were in the nearby forests would actually begin finding 18-inch footprints scattered throughout the area. That's a big foot. This is probably a ruler. That's probably it's like this big. That's huge. You know whose feet that's at the whose feet are this big? Why do I sound like a 2-year-old? Do you know whose feet who's this big? Do you know? I'll give you a hint. Sasquatch. Anyway, and this would happen with increasing frequency. And one group, while tracking a moose, came across what they described as a bloody battle with the footprints leading away, leaving bloody trails behind. But these were deeper, as if whatever I can't read, excuse me.
Gather around because now is Chris Reads Screams.
But these footprints were a lot deeper, as if whatever killed the moose had put it on its back and carried it through the woods, which is a terrifying thought. What the f can carry a moose. Do you know how big a moose is? I sounded so Canadian right there. Do you know how big a moose is? It's like a dinosaur. Okay, you ever see a bronchiosaurus? Pretty close. Well, not that close, but they're big. Jay, put up the biggest moose ever seen, so people get that to scale with a human or something.
An Alaska movie theater getting quite the surprise visitor last week. Do you see that?
Oh my goodness.
A moose walked right through the door and into the lobby. Can I get some popcorn, please?
Right? They know where the good stuff is.
But anyway, the people, terrified by what could do this, would return to town with nothing to show for their efforts, except their lives. And disappearances would begin as hunters and gold miners in the mountains would leave town for work, only never to return or be seen again. Like, how many people gotta disappear before people start being like, Tony, Rob, John, Will, Ted, other man name, all disappeared last week. Anyway, I'm off to work, honey. Did you pack a sandwich? Awesome. All right, I'll see you in a couple days. Or not, I don't know. So was this a serial killer who found his mark? Or a small town that was allegedly already in a haunted area with rumors of the Nantinek, a big hairy creature that was just ripe for the picking? It could have been, but when a local resident, likely a fisher, saw a huge hairy man on the river destroying fishing wheels, people would start to believe the myths. It's always some random fisherman or hunter that sees this guy, you know? And he's like, it was crazy, all right? I was out there fishing, you know? Fishing how I do every night. And I was just minding my own business, eating a sandwich while I was doing it, about 18 beers deep, and then I saw it. It wasn't a bear. I know what a bear looks like, all right? It was about 3,000 yards away, and it was a big hairy man, all right? I know. I don't know why I'm fishing right now and telling you the story at the same time. But people would start to ask themselves, was this the beast that carried that moose away? Was it responsible for the disappearances of the hunters and miners? And the resident would report that it stared at him for a long while before turning and leaving. Just sounds like a regular encounter with a man on any public transportation to me, honestly. You always just see that one guy just in the back of the subway, like. But with the fisherman saying that it just stared at him for a long time and then left, does that mean that this beast was somehow desensitized to people at this point, so it didn't really care about the man's appearance? I don't know. A lot of questions I have, not a lot of answers, but I digress. Let's continue. So let's dive into when things got really wild up in this bitch. So on Port Chatham, a small town in a bay of the same name, local legend told of a giant hairy creature. A legend kept alive by elders of Nanwalek, which was a nearby town. The Nantinek, which I referenced earlier, and whose alleged first sightings dated all the way back to the 1700s during European expeditions. Because this is when native Alaskans began inhabiting the Portlock area, and this is when stories and encounters with mysterious creature began occurring with increasing regularity. And the Nantinek had to be incredibly strong. It was so strong that prospectors would actually come across trees that were completely torn from the earth. And the first theories were, of course, that a bear had done this, but this would quickly become unlikely as things would get stranger still. Because some of the trees weren't just uprooted, they were actually uprooted and flipped on their heads and planted upside down. Like, these pictures are insane. It's gotta be just some dude out there just thinking that he's funny, like doing this. But how would anybody do that without like heavy machinery, you know? So I don't know. I like to think that it's a Sasquatch, that it's an Nantinek. So if Nantinek was powerful enough to do this to a tree, imagine what it could do to the human body. Did that rhyme? I thought it rhymed and that sounded cool, but it kind of sounded stupid. But we might not actually have to use our imaginations, unfortunately, as after the rains came to the region, dismembered body parts would be discovered floating down the river, believed to have belonged to those people that disappeared. So this was absolutely terrifying to the locals. You got Tony, Ted, Ed, John, Will, other guy's name I forgot, these aren't real people, by the way, but horrible. Like, how does that? Body parts, which is interesting, like just being ripped off. I mean, I know a fact or two about bears. Okay, bears just love to, they basically torture you before they actually kill you. They just like to eat you alive, basically. They like a dinner and a show, if you will. So it's possible to believe that a bear could do this, just like rip you apart a little bit. They really like to eat the insides first. Don't ask me why I know so much about bears, okay? I have a deep interest. Also, I have a bear back there. It's real, too. Did you hear it roar? Jay, make it roar. But crazy to say the least. So the floating body parts were naturally recovered so they could maybe identify the individuals. And upon further investigation, they actually saw that the limbs have been out of the socket specifically. And this is where my little bear theory kind of goes away, because there was no gnawing marks recognized on any of the bodies, which would be an indication that a carnivorous animal would have been eating the body, like a wolf or a bear or something like that, but that they had been actually pulled off like a Barbie doll by someone or something stronger than a man. Andrew Kallmekris was a logger who owned his own logging company in the area around 1931, and he would staff people to fulfill various roles such as cutting, stripping, and relocating lumber. And the employees began to experience some interesting occurrences. They would find their logging axes snapped in half at the base like they were twigs, and if you've ever held an axe before, them bitches are thick. They're thick, okay? Don't ask me how I know that, all right? I chop wood. All right, get me in a flannel and that's all I want to do is chop wood. I'm a true Canadian. And they'd sometimes arrive in the morning and find that during the night that all their equipment had been thrown around and scattered, which again is just like weird and why. Like if this was like a little town or something, I'd say teenagers did it, but I don't know. I mean, maybe there are teenagers there and they got nothing else to do, you know? But like fuel this rumor, I'd do it. Just kidding, I wouldn't do that. That's destruction of property, that's wrong. Do not destroy other people's property. And being either afraid or annoyed, people would begin to quit their jobs. And Andrew, obviously not believing it to be the Nantinnec at first, instead believing that it was possibly a rival logging company that was trying to sabotage him, which also makes sense. That makes more sense than my teenage thought in my head. That would make more sense. There's money involved, employees, all that stuff. Okay, yeah, that's fair. But anyway, he would stay and he would actually start just working alone. And not too long after, his body would unfortunately be discovered in the woods. And what his body was found, they saw that his head was hit from behind, and they would find a piece of logging equipment not too far from his body that had blood on it, indicating that it was used as a club. And this kind of machinery, stay with me, would take about 4 men to move. So that's insane. The thing that was used to hit him on the head would take 4 men to pick up and move. And these are loggers, you know? Have you seen a logger? If you just picture that guy in the flannel, the big, like you kind of have to be like jacked, you know? So for it to take 4 of those guys to lift that, I don't really know what to say. The only thing that I could think is that but that wouldn't make sense. I would say that he like fell onto it, but then how would he end up like, you know, far away from the equipment, unless he like got up and wandered around or something. I don't know. I want to think logic. Part of me wants to believe that the Nantinnec is real, but another part of me is very logical and thinks that it's not. But I also really want to go hunting for the Sasquatch or Nantinnec. Let me know if you want to see that. I think that could be a really fun, scary video. I'm gonna go up north and search for it. If this video gets to 200,000 likes, I will go hunt for Sasquatch. I think that's fair. And unfortunately, Andrew Kallmekris' murder or death, we don't know, would go unsolved. So was it the Nantinnec? Was it a rival logging company? I don't know. That's an interesting theory though as well. There were multiple logging companies up there and they were all trying to make money and he was the only one working on the site, and just to get rid of him would be, you know, pretty easy, especially in that time. So who knows? I don't know. But alleged sightings of the Nantinnec would increase with such frequency that some would speculate that there were actually multiple. And I can only imagine the fear that hunters in the region would feel with their livelihood dependent on being alone in the woods. Basically, I would hate that. As much as I want to think like, oh, I've camped before, I know how to being alone in the woods, that shit, man. No, not unless it's an apocalypse. You won't find me in the woods alone. With somebody, sure, that's fun. Alone, absolutely not. You're asking to get eaten by an Nantinnec. Not to mention that hunters need to make noise for a living as well, as like hunting and shooting guns, arrows, hurting animals, that kind of thing. So to have to like be scared of this mythical cryptid in the woods with you and then having to make noise in order to live and eat, it's just like, what a nightmare is all I'm trying to say. And it's not surprising with the rising paranoia in this area that it was only a matter of time before a hunter would actually see one, allegedly. And one such hunter supposedly fired at an Nantinnec in center mass, only to watch it calmly reach down and pluck the bullet out of its fur and chest. That's crazy. That's a movie. I mean, people make up some wild stories, but I want to believe it. I want to believe this. So following this incident specifically, hunters would then start to try to engage with this hairy man, as if it was capable of tearing trees out of the ground and flipping them and planting them back in the ground, and bullets couldn't penetrate its fur. It would basically be a death sentence of trying to think that you could take this thing on, but they did it anyway. And earlier we talked about how it was believed that the forest itself could actually be haunted as well. So perhaps paranoia had just reached a fever pitch. Or this was actually true and residents would start to see a specter in the woods. Because besides the Nantinnuk, there was actually reports beginning to circulate about a lady in black prowling through the woods, dragging behind her a pale white face. She would be seen wailing like a banshee from the cliffs, and if anyone approached, she would vanish. Her appearance was said to be deformed, and she floated in the air. It would seem that the forest itself was trying to drive people out from Portlock, which would end up being the case. Like, what a specific ghost, too. It just makes me want to go there with Selena, you know? I want to go and see a lady in black prowling through the woods, dragging behind her a pale face. That sounds like a good time to me. If this video gets to... I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So people, having not felt safe in Portlock for quite some time, would leave in hopes of finding a better life somewhere else. And the decline of people leaving would be just a trickle at first, but in 1949 it would come rapid. The mine, the cannery, and the schoolhouse would be the first to become completely abandoned, but the rest of the town was not far behind. The last resident in Portlock actually would be the postmaster. The mailman just stopped to lock the place up, I guess, I don't know. But he would stay alone for a year. A year! He stayed alone in this dark, scary, cryptid, ghost-ridden town for a year. This man has to be the bravest man I know. My question is, what? He's a mailman. There's no one in the town, so who was he delivering mail to? Or was he just up there? Maybe he didn't have anywhere to go. I don't know. We don't know that much about it. We just know that he was up there for a year by himself, and he's crazy. Or maybe he's like me and he daydreams about like a zombie apocalypse happening soon and being in a secluded area where he could just hunker down and just let the rest of the world burn while he just has his food and his mail and the Nantinnuk to keep him company, you know? Anybody else think about that? I think about that 50 times a day. I think, about the world ending and a zombie apocalypse happening or something like that. Just me? All right. But anyway, a year after, it would be 1950, and that is when Portlock would become completely abandoned. So after 50 years of hauntings, disappearances, and murders, nature would retake Portlock. So since the town's abandonment in the 1950s, there's been instances of people returning to Portlock for various reasons.
No one go off on their own. We chit-chat and have a good time, but be observant, and you want to listen, and keep your eye out for any strange movements behind trees, for various potential hazards that are out there.
For example, in the 70s, there were fishermen who were caught in a storm and sought shelter in Portlock until it passed. And during their stay, they reported experiencing some strange things. They felt as though they were being stalked by a two-legged being and had walked through their camp. But they said they felt as though. So it's like, do you know? Or do you just feel like it? Because I always feel like I'm being stalked by a two-legged creature, okay? And that's Caleb. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But whatever it was terrified them, and they left Portlock as soon as they could. And it's very well possible that they did know of the stories of Portlock, Alaska, before they ever stepped on the boat, and they would simply allow their imaginations to run wild, which I think is just normal, and they would overanalyze what was happening if they heard a step outside or an animal or something, just thinking that it was the Nantinnuk. But other people that decided to go out there was actually Discovery Plus, of all people, and they put out a series called Alaskan Killer Bigfoot, where they would hope to find evidence of the Nantinnuk, and it's something else. I would give it a watch if you like that kind of stuff. It's pretty entertaining. They really hype stuff up, but I mean, it's super fun. It seems pretty dramatic and kind of faked up, but if you enjoy watching those kind of shows, I think you'd like it. But things would get pretty ridiculous, to say the least, in the show. They would have an attendance of a medium, for example, and they would be sensitive to who believed that there was a demon in the woods with them, and the demon would be screaming at them in their head to leave the forest, which is interesting.
Dark figure, and it watched us, and it paced across the top of the hill as we climbed up. It doesn't want us here. This is his land. You are not allowed here. It's possessive.
So not only is there a Nantinuk and a woman in black that drags a pale face behind her, but there's also a demon now, which is fun. So if this video gets to 200,000, I'm just kidding. I'm not going there. I'm not going there specifically, but I think it'd be fun to hunt for a Nantinuk or Sasquatch of some sort in a closer area. I don't think going to Alaska where I'm just more so scared of bears, okay? Like big brown bears, grizzly bears. That's what I'm afraid of because and especially during eating season, you know? I guess we're getting into that, aren't we? Yeah, I'm not going up there. Somewhere else, though. Anyway, I don't know if any of these stories are true. I'd like to kind of believe them. I'm sure there's lots of things out there that are unexplained, and I'd like to talk about them more. And if you guys want to hear any more fun paranormal or cryptid stories, let me know down below. I really like looking into them and talking about them. But until then, I will see your beautiful face in the next video, and make sure to have a buddy next time you go on a hike, because you could be being stalked by the Nantinuk. It's right behind me, isn't it? Oh no, please, no, please, no Sasquatch, no!